Hey friends, just a quick heads up. This case gets pretty intense and, honestly, might be a little unsettling for some viewers. There are moments that are hard to hear, but if you're like me, a true crime nerd who believes every story deserves to be told and justice deserves to be served, then stick around. Grab your popcorn, maybe a drink, get comfortable, and let's go deep into one of the most unbelievable cases you've ever heard. Okay, just picture this. A quiet suburban neighborhood in Orlando, Florida. It's summer, the air feels thick, cicadas humming in the background, and then, out of nowhere, a single phone call cuts through that calm. July 15th, 2008. Cindy Anthony, a grandmother whose voice is trembling so hard you can almost feel it through the phone line. She's crying, panicked, trying to explain something no parent or grandparent should ever have to say. There's something wrong, she tells the 911 operator. It smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car. And right there, right in that moment, the world stops. That one sentence, that one desperate call, would light a fire that spread far beyond that Florida neighborhood. It would pull in detectives, reporters, lawyers, and millions of people around the world. Everyone trying to make sense of a story that didn't make sense at all. You see, the name at the center of that call wasn't just anyone's. It was Cayley Anthony, 22 years old, smiling, carefree, and, according to her own words, a loving mother to a bright little girl named Cayley Marie Anthony. But wait, before the deep dive, I gotta ask a quick favor. We're building this awesome community, and I'd love to know who's in the room. To be honest, it always blows my mind how far these stories travel, so just tell me, where in the world are you tuning in from right now? Go ahead and throw it in the chat. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the comments section later. Cayley was 2, just 2. She loved coloring books, watching cartoons, and giving hugs that could melt your heart. Friends said she had this tiny laugh that could light up a whole room. The kind of kid everyone adored. But here's the thing. Cayley told police that Cayley had been missing for 31 days. Yeah, you heard that right. 31. Not 31 minutes. Not even 31 hours. 31 days. And during those days, no police reports. No searches. No emergency calls. Nothing. Life went on like everything was fine, until that call from Cindy broke the silence. Imagine that for a second. A child gone for a month before anyone outside the family even knew. It's the kind of detail that just makes your brain stop and go, wait, how? That single fact would turn this from a simple missing persons report into one of the most polarizing and emotionally charged cases in American history. It wasn't just about what happened. It was about how it happened and who could have let it happen. And as the story unfolds, it drags everyone, family, friends, even strangers, into a maze of lies, confusion, and heartbreak. Because this wasn't just a crime story. It was something deeper, darker, and far more personal. So buckle up, because by the end of this, you won't just be asking who hurt Cayley. You'll be asking how someone could live like nothing happened, while the world waited for the truth. I mean, get this, this is only the beginning. Cayley Marie Anthony, born August 9th, 2005, just 2 years old, with those big brown eyes that everyone remembered, and that tiny giggle that made even bad days feel lighter. People who knew her said she was pure sunshine. She loved stuffed animals, her little playhouse in the backyard, and running into her grandpa's arms the second he came home. Her grandparents, Cindy and George, adored her. She was their world. And then there was Cayley, the young mother everyone thought had it all figured out. At 22, she looked like the picture of happiness, smiling in every photo, posing with Cayley at birthday parties, talking about her big plans and new job. To her friends, she seemed fun, full of energy, always ready to go out and laugh. But that was only one version of Cayley, because there was another side, one her family didn't always see. The lies started small, things people brushed off, where she worked, who she was with, where Cayley was staying. But over time, those lies started stacking up. And when detectives later retraced her steps, they realized almost everything she had told people was made up. It was like she had built a whole new world, one where truth didn't really exist. The contrast between mother and daughter couldn't have been more heartbreaking. While Cayley's toys still sat untouched in her pink bedroom, detectives outside were already questioning how something this dark could have happened in such an ordinary home. Inside, there were framed photos of birthday cakes and smiling faces. Outside, there were whispers of evidence, suspicion, and something no one wanted to say aloud. Neighbors would later say they never noticed anything strange. They saw Casey playing with Cayley, taking her for walks, being what looked like a loving mom. But when investigators began piecing things together, the question wasn't just what happened to Cayley. It was who Casey really was. Because the woman smiling in those photos was not the woman detectives were coming to know. One was affectionate, cheerful, carefree. The other was secretive, detached, and disturbingly calm as her daughter's face filled every news screen in the country. That's the painful part of this story, the duality. The loving image of a young mom and the chilling realization that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't who everyone thought she was. And the hardest thing to process? The monster in this story might not be hiding in the shadows. It might be the same person who tucked that little girl into bed at night. Alright, so let's take a step back for a second, yeah? Because before that 911 call, before the chaos and the headlines, there was this weird calm. The kind that doesn't make sense until you look at it in hindsight. You ever meet someone who lies so easily it almost feels like rehearsed? That was Casey. She didn't just tell lies, she lived inside them. And for a while, everyone believed her. So, in the weeks before July 15th, 2008, Casey was, well, out living her life. She was telling people she had this full-time job at Universal Studios. Big company. Sounds impressive, right? Except, yeah, she didn't actually work there. Not even a little. She'd been fired years before but still woke up, dressed for work, told her parents she was heading out, and then spent her days doing, well, who even knows what exactly. And then there's this whole Zani the nanny story. According to Casey, this woman named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez was Cayley's babysitter. She told that to her parents, her friends, even the police. It sounded totally believable at first. Everyone's got a babysitter, right? But get this, when investigators tried to find her, she didn't exist. Like at all. No records, no address, nothing. Meanwhile, Casey's friends started noticing things that didn't quite line up. She'd show up at parties, laughing, dancing, posting pictures online. This is June 2008. Mind you, the same time she said Cayley was with the nanny. People thought, oh, Casey's got it all handled. She's balancing work, motherhood, fun. But, man, when you look at those photos now, knowing what was really going on, it hits different. Her best friend at the time, Amy, later said Casey seemed totally normal. Smiling, talking about future plans, borrowing her car, hanging out. No one thought anything was wrong. That's what makes it so eerie. It wasn't the picture of a panicked mom. It was someone acting like life was business as usual. And here's the part that really sticks. Her parents had no clue. Cindy and George believed she was working, that Cayley was safe with the nanny. They bought every story because, honestly, why wouldn't they? You don't expect your own daughter to lie about her child's whereabouts. But slowly, those cracks started showing. Casey's phone calls got shorter, her explanations stranger, and when her mother finally pressed her for answers, she'd change the subject or make up a new version on the spot. It was like trying to hold on to smoke. You think you've got it, and then it slips away. So anyway, as you sit there piecing this together, it starts feeling less like a mystery and more like a performance. Every move Casey made in those weeks, every text, every outing, every smile, was part of a script she was writing in real time. And that's the chilling part, you know? Everyone around her thought they were living real life. But Casey? She was already living in a lie so deep. Even she might have started believing it. Here's where the gut punch really lands, right? Because the betrayal in this story, it didn't come from a stranger lurking around the corner or some random danger out there in the dark. No, it came from within, from the one place where everyone should have been safest. So like Cindy and George Anthony, Casey's parents, they honestly believed everything their daughter was telling them. They thought she was out there working hard at Universal Studios, building a life, doing her best as a young mom. And every time they asked about Cayley, Casey had an answer ready. The nanny's got her. We went to the park. We're visiting friends. It all sounded so normal that no one ever questioned it. But here's the part that really hurts. You know what I mean? That trust they had in her, the trust that parents naturally have for their kid, it got twisted into something else. It got used against them. Every story Casey told, every "don't worry, Mom," became another layer in this world she was inventing. To be honest, it's wild how detailed she made it. Like, there wasn't just a nanny. There were coworkers, offices, routines. She'd tell her parents she was working late, but she wasn't working anywhere. She'd talk about dropping Cayley off at the sitter's house, and yet, that house didn't even exist. She'd even send text messages to friends about her work shifts or plans with Zani. It was a whole alternate reality, stitched together lie by lie. And, well, I guess what makes this even more heartbreaking is how easily she carried it. There wasn't panic. There wasn't fear. It was like she'd built this wall between her world and everyone else's, and nobody realized until it was too late. When Cindy started asking more questions, like, "Hey, can I talk to Cayley?" Or "Where exactly are you staying?" Casey would brush it off. She'd say things like, "Oh, she's sleeping," or "We're out right now." And because they trusted her, they believed her. That's what families do, right? You assume your child is telling the truth. But that's the twist in this story. The danger didn't come from outside the house. It came from the story being told inside it. A mother's own words became a shield, blocking everyone from the truth. By the time her parents realized something was actually wrong, that shield was solid. The lies were airtight. You couldn't poke a hole through them without everything collapsing. And that's the part that stays with you. The idea that a family's love, their trust, could be turned into the very thing that kept them blind to what was really happening. It's not just deception. It's betrayal at the deepest level, where love itself gets used as a cover. So here's where things start getting, a little eerie, you know? Because when investigators began digging into Casey's story, they started noticing certain things that didn't quite fit. And trust me, these details, small as they might seem right now, are going to matter later. So, keep them in your mind, alright? Let's start with that car. Casey's Pontiac Sunfire. On the surface, it looked totally normal, just another car sitting in the driveway. But, well, when investigators took a closer look, they noticed something off. The car had this strange odor, one that immediately made people uneasy. And without getting into anything graphic, let's just say the professionals who examined it agreed that what they found inside wasn't something you'd expect in an ordinary vehicle. Just remember that trunk, okay? Because it's going to tell its own story later. Then there's the whole thing with the duct tape. Now, at first, it was just another piece of random material, something you wouldn't think twice about. But when everything finally came together months later, that same type of tape became a key detail. It was found in a place that connected directly back to the Anthony home. Not saying too much right now, but yeah, that's a detail that's going to echo all the way through this story. And then there's the strangest part, Casey's computer. Investigators eventually looked into her search history, and, oh man, some of the things they found were just chilling. Again, nothing I can spell out too much here, but there were searches that hinted at ways to make someone sleep deeply, things that sounded, well, unsettling. You ever come across something online that makes you think, why would anyone even look that up? Yeah, that kind of thing. So anyway, we've got a car that raises serious questions, a piece of tape that won't stop showing up, and a computer with searches that point towards something dark. These aren't random coincidences. They're pieces of a puzzle that's slowly forming a picture. You know how, in some stories, the smallest details turn out to be the biggest clues? That's exactly what's happening here. Each one of these things, the trunk, the tape, the computer, will come back around. And when they do, everything you thought you understood about this case is going to shift completely. We've all had those family arguments, right? The kind that start small, about money, responsibility, or someone not telling the full truth. And before you know it, voices rise, tempers flare, and everyone's talking over each other. It's messy, but it's normal. Families fight. But this one, oh man, this one was different. So, it's the evening of July 15th, 2008. Cindy Anthony had been trying for weeks to get straight answers from her daughter. Where's Cayley? Who's watching her? Why can't I talk to her on the phone? And Casey, like always, had another explanation ready to go. She said Cayley was with the nanny. She said she was working. She said everything was fine. But after a month of excuses, something in Cindy just snapped. So imagine being a grandmother who hasn't seen her little granddaughter in over 30 days. You're asking questions, getting half answers, and deep down your gut is screaming that something isn't right. That's exactly where Cindy was that night. That quiet, uneasy feeling? It had turned into full-blown panic. Now here's where things really start to shift. Earlier that day, the family got a call from a tow yard saying Casey's car had been sitting there for a while. They went to pick it up, not thinking much of it, just another thing to deal with. But the second they opened that trunk, well, they knew something was wrong. I'm not going to get into any heavy details here, but let's just say the smell, yeah, that smell, was something nobody in that family would ever forget. Cindy would later describe it as unmistakable. It was the moment everything clicked, the second when worry turned into dread. You know that feeling when your worst fear suddenly becomes real. That's what hit her right then and there. Casey, on the other hand, acted calm. Too calm, actually. When her mother confronted her, demanding to know where Cayley was, Casey just kept dodging, spinning more stories, more excuses. And that's when Cindy finally picked up the phone and made the call that would start everything. It's hard to even imagine, right? 1 minute, it's a family argument about money and honesty, and the next, it's something that will shake the whole country. What started as a grandmother's intuition became a national nightmare. That night, the line between ordinary family drama and something far darker completely disappeared. Because sometimes, you don't realize how deep the lies go until you open the trunk that is, oh, here's the question we've all been thinking, right? Why? Why did Casey lie? Why keep up the act for an entire month while everyone around her thought everything was fine? You and I can sit here and go over every little detail, but at the core, it still doesn't make sense. How is that even possible? Let's start with what we know. During those 31 days when Cayley was supposedly with the nanny, Casey was out living what looked like a normal, even carefree life. Photos showed her laughing, dancing, posing with friends. She got a new tattoo that read Bella Vita, which means beautiful life, just days after Cayley disappeared. And you sit there thinking, wait, how can anyone do that? How do you smile, party, and ink a phrase like that while your child's missing? Some experts later tried to explain it. They talked about narcissism, denial, emotional immaturity. That maybe Casey wasn't processing reality like most people would. That she had learned to control her world through lies. Because the truth was something she couldn't face. I mean, we've all seen people who avoid hard truths, right? But this wasn't just avoiding reality. This was rewriting it. And that's the part that hits hardest. Because, sure, some people make bad choices when they're scared. Some panic, freeze, or cover up mistakes. But to carry on for 31 days, shopping, texting, clubbing, smiling for pictures, that's not denial. That's performance. It's the difference between losing control and controlling the story so completely that even you start believing it. You and I can only imagine what her parents were feeling in those moments, watching their daughter act so normal while their granddaughter was nowhere to be seen. How do you even begin to confront someone who seems completely detached from what's really happening? So we're left with theories. Was it fear? Was it rage? Or was it something far more chilling? The complete absence of guilt? Because at some point, the lies weren't just about hiding the truth. They became the truth, at least in Casey's world. And no matter how many times you replay it, it always comes back to that same, haunting question, the one that kept the nation awake at night. Where's Cayley? Everything starts happening fast now. The story that once felt like a strange family drama suddenly explodes into something way bigger. Sirens, news crews, flashing lights, and a growing sense that this is about to become one of the most talked about cases in the country. The 911 calls go public. Reporters pick them apart line by line. You hear Cindy's voice breaking as she tells the operator, "It smells like there's been a body in the car." Every major network grabs that soundbite. Every headline screams one question. What happened to Cayley Anthony? Detectives move in almost immediately. They start retracing Casey's steps, and it doesn't take long before things start crumbling. Remember those stories about her job? The nanny? The trips to work? Yeah, none of it checks out. Every phone call, every text, every place she claimed to be, it all falls apart one by one. Now get this. Casey tells police she can take them to her office at Universal Studios. She's calm, confident, totally sure of herself. The detectives go along with it, maybe half expecting something to make sense. They walk through the gates, down the halls, until finally, they stop. Casey turns to them and says, "I don't actually work here." Just like that. No emotion, no panic, just a quiet admission, like she's saying she forgot her keys. That moment right there becomes symbolic of the whole case. Walking through an illusion until the truth hits a wall. And while that's happening, the world outside is falling in love with Cayley's memory. News clips show her tiny smile, her playful eyes. Videos surface of her singing songs and running through the yard. It's impossible not to feel it. The contrast is brutal. Footage of an innocent child set against the cold, clipped interviews of her mother sitting across from detectives. As the investigation deepens, so does the public outrage. People hold candlelight vigils, posters go up, strangers send tips from across the country. Everyone's hoping, somehow, that Cayley will be found alive. But with each passing day, that hope gets quieter. Then, months later, December 11th, 2008, a local meter reader walking near the Anthony home spots something in the woods. It's a small bag, half covered by brush. He calls the police. At first, it seems routine, but when investigators arrive and look closer, the entire tone shifts. They clear the area. Radios go silent. What they find is small, too small, and it confirms what everyone had feared but couldn't bring themselves to say. It's the moment the nation hoped would never come, came. For a second, the noise stops. The endless commentary, the theories, the interviews, all of it just pauses. Because now, it isn't about the search anymore. It's about the truth, and the truth hurts in ways words can't really capture. You can almost feel that collective heartbreak through the screens. Millions of people staring at the same headline, whispering the same question. How could this happen? From that moment on, the story shifts again. It's no longer about finding Cayley. It's about finding out why she was lost in the first place. And every clue, every piece of evidence, every word that comes next pulls us deeper into the storm that started with one phone call and ended in silence. The area is sealed off, yellow tape stretching through the trees, flashes from cameras lighting up the wet ground. Detectives move carefully, documenting every inch, every item. The media is already there, waiting, whispering, broadcasting live updates before the scene is even clear. Everyone knows this moment is going to change everything. The medical examiner arrives, calm but focused. They move toward the small clearing where the discovery was made. Officers step aside, giving space. The world seems to hold its breath. Because deep down, everyone already knows what this means, but no one wants to say it first. Investigators collect what's left of the evidence with careful hands. They photograph, measure, bag, and label, each step deliberate. It's quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels heavier than sound itself. And right there, among the leaves and rain-soaked earth, they find the piece that connects every lie Cayley ever told. The medical examiner examines the small skull, and, yeah, I'm not even going to describe what they notice. Some details you just can't unhear. Let's just say, whatever it was, it changed everything. The entire case shifted from maybe to no doubt. But before I tell you what that discovery actually was, let's take a step back for a second, because you're going to want to understand how we even got to this point. See, the investigation had already been closing in. Evidence was stacking up, contradictions were piling higher, and Cayley's carefully built story was beginning to crumble. So, before we get to what was uncovered that day in those woods, before the heartbreak really hits, let's rewind. Let's talk about how the truth finally caught up with Cayley Anthony. This is where the story gets heavy. The part everyone remembers, but no one really wants to think about. The part where silence says more than words ever could. So, the medical examiner completes the analysis. It's detailed, methodical, careful, every observation documented, every small clue recorded. They look at what was recovered from that wooded area, and slowly, a picture begins to form. A picture that confirms what everyone had feared deep down, but couldn't bring themselves to say out loud. There were certain items found near what was left behind. Things that shouldn't have been there. Everyday materials that suddenly meant something different, something no one wanted to believe. A piece of tape, a strand of hair, subtle signs that told a story far darker than anyone wanted to imagine. Forensic specialists examined the car Cayley had driven, the one everyone kept talking about. They ran tests, studied air samples, and while I can't get into every scientific detail, let's just say what they detected lined up with what they found in those woods. And that's where the puzzle finally started to fit together. Investigators also uncovered something else. Searches made on Cayley's home computer. Terms that, in context, sounded deeply concerning. Things about cleaning chemicals and how to make certain substances that no one should ever have to look up. It wasn't proof on its own, but it painted a chilling picture when placed alongside everything else. By this point, the evidence was speaking louder than Cayley ever did. Detectives didn't need confessions. They had patterns, lies, searches, timelines, and those physical traces that tied it all together. And when the examiner's final report came out, it didn't spell out every detail. It didn't have to. The silence between the lines said enough. What they found was enough to confirm what everyone feared, but no one wanted to say aloud. That was the moment the story stopped being about hope. From then on, it was about accountability. The world knew Cayley wasn't coming home. And the question changed completely. It wasn't, "Where is she?" anymore. It was, "How could this happen?" There's something haunting about that kind of silence. The kind that falls when truth replaces denial. You can almost feel it, like the air itself gets heavier. Because now, there's no pretending, no waiting for good news. Just the quiet realization that innocence has been lost forever, and the only thing left is justice trying to catch up. Here's the part that flips everything on its head, the one detail that changes the whole story. Investigators had already pieced together Casey's movements, her car, the timeline, all of it. But then they found something else, something digital. Something that lived quietly on her computer, waiting to speak louder than any testimony ever could. When forensic experts examined the Anthony family's desktop, they uncovered a trail of searches that made everyone's stomach drop. Words and phrases no one could explain away. Things like how to make chloroform, neck-breaking, and household weapons. It was chilling, not just because of what was searched, but because of when those searches were made, around the same time Cayley was last seen. The prosecution immediately seized on it. They said, "Look, this is intent. This is planning. This isn't panic or a mistake. This is something thought out." For them, it was the missing puzzle piece that tied everything together. But then came the twist. The defense team pushed back hard. They argued that the search history wasn't so clear-cut. That maybe someone else in the house made those searches. Maybe it wasn't Casey typing those words at all. The evidence got murky. Timestamps didn't align perfectly, records seemed inconsistent, and experts disagreed on who was actually at the keyboard. And that's when things shifted from fact to perception. The courtroom stopped feeling like a place for truth. It became a stage for interpretation. Two sides telling the same story in completely different ways. The prosecution painted Casey as cold, selfish, detached. They showed the photos of her out partying, the tattoo that said Bella Vita, and asked the jury to see what they saw. A young woman celebrating her beautiful life, just days after her daughter vanished. The defense countered with something else entirely. They said Casey wasn't a monster. She was a young mother caught in chaos, covering up an accident she didn't know how to handle. They claimed she was broken, not evil. That every strange decision came from fear, not malice. And then it hit prosecutors. This wasn't just a murder trial. It was a character trial. The evidence might have been on paper, but the real battle was for hearts and minds. Was Casey Anthony a calculating liar, or a desperate girl in over her head? Every word, every photo, every tear was dissected in front of the world. And still, somehow, nothing felt certain. Because here's the thing. Sometimes the truth isn't enough when doubt walks into the room. And in this case, that doubt was about to change everything. The stage was set, the jury was watching, and the world was holding its breath. The verdict, when it finally came, would leave everyone speechless. The courtroom is silent for a heartbeat that feels like forever. The foreperson stands, the paper in hand, and reads the words no one expected to hear. Not guilty. Gasps ripple through the room. Someone cries out. Reporters rush to the doors. Cameras flash. The world tilts for a second. Casey Anthony doesn't cry. She exhales, almost in disbelief, while across the aisle her parents sit frozen. Outside, hundreds of people shout in anger. Some call it justice denied. Others call it proof that the system works. But no one really feels peace. Television anchors talk nonstop. Commentators argue about what went wrong. Social media explodes. Hashtags, opinions, outrage. Everyone becomes a juror in their own living room. Some say the jury failed. Others say the evidence did. But underneath all of it, one question keeps echoing. How could this happen? Inside the Anthony home, Cindy holds a framed picture of Cayley, her smile frozen in time. Outside, Casey walks free into flashing lights and noise, the most hated woman in America walking into anonymity. The contrast couldn't be sharper. A grandmother clutching memories, a daughter stepping into the sunlight, and a nation divided. The case didn't just end that day. It changed something in how people saw justice. It sparked new fascination with forensic science, digital evidence, jury psychology, and what it means to prove guilt. It made everyone question how stories are told in courtrooms, and how much of truth can ever survive a trial. In the end, the system didn't fail to find guilt. It failed to find truth. And here's the part that stays with you. Cayley Marie Anthony would have been almost 20 today. Her laughter, her future, all of it, gone. Her story reminds us that sometimes evil doesn't wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles for the camera.